The misconception is that the whole brotherhood turned on me. It literally was a handful of guys from my platoon. The rest of my platoon wanted nothing to do with it. The high-up officers of NSW took their side immediately. I was guilty until I had to prove myself innocent. So you have a very dangerous combination of people that work for NCIS who are ambitious, but also incompetent at the same time. That is how you get these cases that are so screwed up, because each of them are trying to make a name for themselves when they pick up a case like this. It wasn't until I was thrown in a prison cell and having everything taken from me to where I was no longer in control of my own destiny. I just got on my hands and knees in the middle of my cell and I cried out to God.
How have you been, man? How's Andrea and how are the kids?
Oh, dude, we're doing awesome. It's been a crazy year. A lot of things going on, but yeah, we're flourishing, man. Even with the stuff that life throws at you from time to time. I think we were talking a little bit before we started. And had a little injury about a week and a half ago. Sort of put a pause on everything that I was, work-wise that I'm doing. Tore my quad from my knee, so I'm now going to be laid up for the next foreseeable 3 to 5 months. But other than that, everything is going good, man. This is just another obstacle to grow from.
I took an extended rest period after my last ultra. And when I stop moving is when I really start to feel the wheels fall off.
Yes.
And things start, like I start feeling, quote unquote, my age, but, or my injuries, or, how poorly I treated my body as a younger guy. And just as I'm starting to, start the whole train up sequence again, right? Start training for another race. As when my back goes out and I like pulled a tendon or something in my calf. So I spent an extra 3 weeks just recuperating. And like we were talking about just off camera, was that that's the worst when you want to be in action, be in motion.
Yeah.
I think to practice that stillness.
Yes. I think for guys like us, that are constantly moving and doing stuff and, staying productive and busy, when things like this happen, and you are forced to sort of sit in the stillness, I think that is probably one of the toughest things for guys like us to do, because like you said, it's like as soon as you stop moving, things feel like they're going to start tumbling or falling apart a little bit. And that's a lot of that is in your own head too. I think you can cause yourself a lot more damage just from having negative thoughts or stressing yourself out from not being able to move. And I think that's the place where I'm at now. And I think that God is working on me in some other form or fashion. And as we don't always understand God's plans. And right now I'm still not understanding it, but I know that something good is going to come out of it. It's just you have to keep on putting your faith in Him and your trust in Him that He's working on you in some form or fashion.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes we just need to practice our patience, which I don't like. Anyways, you were talking about the injuries we do to ourselves. And I was just like going back, categorizing all of these scars, right? And it's like, what is that? Is that a bullet wound in your thigh? No, that's when I went over my handlebars on my Huffy, and you get remember when you're a kid, the handlebars wore in and they slid in. You had the pipes sticking out.
Oh yeah.
I took one of those right into the thigh, and it was 30 something stitches. But it's yeah, that's a bullet wound. Anyways.
You could always spruce up the story a little bit. I've thought about doing that with the way I injured my leg, because it is the weakest story possible. I was crossing the street with my family and slipped and that was it. My foot went all the way back, and yeah, people are like, "Oh, how'd you do that?" I'm just like, walking across the street.
Speaking of being active, staying fit, that kind of thing, I I enjoyed reading your book, Man in the Arena, and one of the standout parts was kind of funny. When Andrea was talking about this this guy she started dating who just came out from a workout, was all muscly and sweaty, and I thought it's very flattering. It was hilarious. Okay, so when you published that book in
I
2021,
I
right?
believe so. Yeah, it was 2021. It was right when well, the whole pandemic I think had already happened. So I wrote the book during that time. So yeah, it would have had to
Mm-hmm.
been early 2021.
You know who else was writing a book at the very same time? Have you heard of a guy? I'm sure you've heard of this guy, David Phillips.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
my close friend from New York Times. Yeah.
My God, it came out like his book came out a month after yours, I
Yeah.
think, and it is so surreal. I read that too, and
Oh,
I'm
did you?
actually I read part of it. I couldn't get through it. That is so sinister, so weird. Even because I was listening to the audiobook version. Even the narrator was talking in one of those weird, like over the top, like, and then he had the sneer, like, he's mine. Like, come on, can you just talk normal?
Oh, yeah.
But
That guy. I mean, when I heard, I knew he was going to write a book about the whole thing, and Dave Phillips. He was a New York Times reporter that was covering the trial the whole time, and he was definitely not a fan of mine or my family's. It was like evident the whole time. It just
or the
what
military in
his
general.
agenda. Yeah, he had a narrative and an agenda that he wanted to push, and so yeah, he ended up writing that story, and I think the book got sent to me by a buddy, and I read probably half a chapter, and what was amazing, it was the chapter was about my childhood, and none of it was true. Like it was all just made. He literally made things up about my childhood and what I had done in my childhood and where I mean, even little things like jobs I worked. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, dude, if you were going to write a book about somebody, I mean, the least you could do is get, certain aspects of the truth in there that have no, they don't even have anything to do with the whole story. But he couldn't even do that. So, I mean, it was pretty pathetic. And, we were glad to see, I think it was like last year or the year before, his book was on one of those sites that were selling novels for like 10 cents, So it's like, all right, the book obviously didn't do too hot.
But the thing is, though, there's so much in there that you could not possibly have known, except to just hearsay, or you're just told to the what would you call what was it called in your book, the sewing circle.
Yes.
So to back up a little bit, and just to give a little background here, and I don't understand either of these retelling of this book. One, I don't understand how he could get it so wrong because it's just vitriol. But I mean, I can understand journalists they
Yeah.
put the. But anyways, even your story, even the truth, I don't understand how you one person could be just dogpiled by a brotherhood, by the Navy, by it seems like the world without a semblance of truth.
Well, and I mean, that's the sad part that I don't think people realize. And the misconception is that, the whole brotherhood turned on me and, the teams were completely against me. And, the big lie out there was like his whole platoon turned him in. None of that is true. It literally was a handful of guys from my platoon. The rest of my platoon wanted nothing to do with it. They were like,
Mm-hmm.
they knew like this is not good, what's going on, and they all lawyered up and were like, hey, we're not gonna get involved. So it was, 4 to 5 guys from the platoon in total, and then once they had come out with that allegation that I had stabbed an ISIS prisoner to death, which again, that was a whole other lie in itself. But once
Mm-hmm.
that got out, the command, you know, the high up officers of NSW took their side immediately. I was guilty, until I had to prove myself innocent. But because they took their side, they started putting out, a narrative to the rest of the teams that,
Mm-hmm.
I was this bad person, that I did all these things. But what they didn't realize is the teams itself, it really drew a huge line in the SEAL teams, because I think I at that point had been around for 20 years and I had a pretty decent reputation. So guys that were hearing this from the command, all the officers, they were like, this doesn't make any sense. And if anybody questioned the narrative, or stood up and actually spoke up for me, they were then punished as well. So it really set a bad example
Mm-hmm.
for the community. But in the end, it really, like, I always, it was like the boy who cried wolf, that story.
Mm-hmm.
You say things so many times that that's a lie, but then as soon as it's proven wrong, I mean, maybe the boy who cried wolf is not a great example, but I don't know where I was going with that. But either way, during the whole process, while they were trying to prosecute me, and they had locked me up in prison for 9.5 months, while they tried to continue their investigation and try to find things on me, and during the time, everything kept coming out that was actually against their narrative. The truth was coming out, and they decided not to look at any of that and to continue to press on to try and prosecute me. And it really blew up in their face
Mm-hmm.
when it came down to trial. And that was the whole sad part of this whole debacle. Was it was like a 2.5 year process, and we ended up winning at the end, but it took 2.5 years to get to that point. 2.5 years of my command smearing me, the media smearing me, driving this narrative, not just throughout the country. It became an international story.
Mm-hmm.
And when they put out a narrative like that for a year and a half, and it gets proven wrong, they're never going to admit that they made a mistake, or they're like, hey, we were wrong in this. So they continue to double down. And I think that set a bad precedent in our community, because the enlisted in our community were then like, well, now we can't trust officers, because they'll come after you no matter what, no matter how good of a team guy that you are. They'll hang you out to dry. So, I think that problem is still prevalent because of my case, but I hope that it's getting fixed, or I hope that it's getting mended, at least in some form or fashion.
But that's the thing it's so remarkable about this, is that every step of the way, it was like basic humanity, basic sensibility seemed to be tossed out for some kind of a sensational thing. You enlist, you fight, and everybody's got that, like the sailor's creed, the Navy SEAL creed, and the core values drilled into them. And then all of a sudden, this unfounded, just speculation is cast upon you, and then everybody wants to get a piece of this dog pile.
Yeah.
And what was the guy's name? Warpinski, the NCIS agent.
Yeah,
He,
Joe Warpinski.
yeah, that guy. I mean, this is why I believe this, and basically all of NCIS is why I believe Mark Harmon is one of the greatest actors of all time. I mean, because they're a bunch of mall cops.
They're a bunch of dweebs. I mean, NCIS, CID, and OSI. So OSI is the Air Force version of NCIS. Uh, CID is the Army version, and then obviously NCIS is with the Navy and Marine Corps. What people don't realize about them is they are like the bottom rung when it comes to investigative work or being in a job like that. Most of these guys they apply to be in the FBI, CIA, or name your three-letter agency, and they don't make the cut because they don't have what it takes. But NCIS will take them, and so that's where they end up going. So you have a very dangerous combination of people that work for NCIS who are ambitious but also incompetent at the same time. And that is how you get these cases that are so screwed up because each of them are trying to make a name for themselves when they pick up a case like this. And Joe Warpinski is a perfect example. The guy had never worked a case this big ever. He had only been doing the job for a couple years. And so he saw this as his chance to make a name for himself. I'm going to put a seal away for murder and this will skyrocket me. And he literally went into it head first with his own agenda. I mean, when I put the QR codes in my book, The Man in the Arena, and you can go and look at all of the interviews that he conducted, and some of those interviews he starts off with. This is before they even have a conclusion or actually know what's going on. But these interviews that he starts off with, we already have our take on what happened. So go ahead and tell us whatever you want. And so what it did is it gave the 3 to 4 guys in that platoon carte blanche to then say whatever they wanted and be like, oh, I'm not going to be held accountable for what I say in here. All we want to do is take down Eddie Gallagher. And that's it. And so when you start off an investigation with a foregone conclusion, then it's just going to get so screwed up from there. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, ignoring evidence or lack thereof, ignoring testimony that doesn't jibe, witness statements that don't agree, don't match, aren't parallel with the narrative, and then holding you in, holding you, detaining you while they do a raid on your home and point weapons right in your kids' faces. Wouldn't even let them get dressed. It's
all fear-based tactics. There was no reason for them to do a raid on my house, especially in the form and fashion that they did it. If they wanted to search my house, they could have easily went up, knocked on the door, been like, "Hey, we have a warrant. We're coming in to search the house," and nothing would have happened to them. They would have been like, "Okay," my family would have been like, "Go ahead." But the reason they did it in that fashion with, they all had assault weapons, they sent about 20 to 25 guys fully kitted up, pointing guns at my kids, pulling them out in the street in their underwear. That is to drive fear into everyone else around you. And it worked because the second they did that, afterwards, my wife, Andrea, was asking the neighbors like, "Hey, what did you see? And, can you help us out?" And the neighbors were like, "No, you guys must have done something. They just don't do that to anybody." Right. And the sad reality is like, yes, they do. And so, it worked in that sense, by scaring people away. And then every tactic they use after that is the exact same, is to scare people to come forward and to helping you out. And so, at the end of the day, during trial, Joe Warpinski had to take the stand and he had to admit on all the mistakes that he made as an investigator. And he admitted he broke the law. He admitted all those things on the stand.
Well, just like the raid, also, besides the optics of it, these guys just sit around on their butts their entire careers. And then they get an opportunity and they're like, they get all geared up and say, "Hey guys, you're the tag still hanging off that body armor, buddy."
Exactly. They had to, so for the listeners, they had to have an actual FBI agent there when they did the raid. He did not take part in the raid. He was just there as an oversight because they knew, like, they don't know what they're doing. So they had to have an adult present to be like, okay, this is how you conduct it in this form or fashion.
Yeah. So, but then before all of this, it was this conspiracy of the sewing circle, these clowns within your platoon that, what were they? Why were they were? There was this talk, even in the trial, talking about you stealing Red Bulls and
Yep.
glasses. Like, I don't know about you. Imagine the Navy SEALs; they get plenty of gear. I don't know, as an EOD tech in the Army, which is basically, you know, we're not special operations like the Navy's EOD. We're like first responders, right? Um, we're a cleanup crew basically. So, but we still get sent, iPro and backpacks, and we get all sorts of cool gear.
Yeah.
And these guys are complaining that the Red Bull is missing. I,
It's this is the way I explain it to people. The reason that happened is, and I'll try and break it down in the shortest form possible. That was their first combat deployment ever, and I'll give them this. That was a very hectic combat deployment to go on. It was 6 months of straight work of clearing through Mosul and getting rid of ISIS. Um,
mm-hmm,
I think that they were not prepared for what they saw or the things that we saw ISIS do, and I think it got to them. And I think that they, instead of trying to process it on their own, they decided to point the finger and be like, "This is your fault that I'm dealing with all these things and seeing all these things. You're putting us in harm's way. You're making us go out every day." And they let that little sewing circle or that hate circle build up during the deployment, and they got it got so bad that they actually started believing that I was the one causing all of their problems. And so when they got back from that deployment, they wanted nothing but get rid of me in some form or fashion. Now, I had a great reputation. I had a good reputation on that deployment.
it was
All
selected for
of
senior.
all the leadership that I worked for on that deployment gave me all sorts of accommodations. When I got back, I was going to pick up rank. I actually had been nominated and put in for a Silver Star. All these things happened, and they were losing their minds over it. And so I think at first, they started trying to smear my reputation by doing the little accusations like, oh, he was stealing power bars and sunglasses, and which I will go ahead and say all of that came out in the trial as well. And I was innocent of all that. People actually admitted that they were the ones who stole the sunglasses and that, oh, no, actually, he wasn't taking power bars. But needless to say, those little accusations
Mm-hmm,
went up to the command, and the command was like, this is ridiculous. Do you have proof, first off? And they're like, no. And they're like, well, then the command even told them, we suggest that you move on,
mm-hmm,
process this deployment and move on and do good things. Well, they couldn't do that. So about 5 months later is when they came up with this allegation that I had stabbed a prisoner of war to death, an ISIS prisoner. And the command, they can't just sit on that. They're like, okay, if this is what you guys are going to report, then we are going to send it to NCIS so they can investigate. And these guys were like, yeah, do it. And that is where the whole thing skyrocketed.
but that's the thing. So you got these guys that are grumbling. They make up a story, and shouldn't the command have said, "Okay, where is enough proof that we can send this to NCIS?" And then where's that video, right? Where that they
Yeah.
claim they had, and then why wouldn't NCIS say, "Where's that video? Where's the proof?" And it was like everybody bought into this story, And it just turned like this stupid spark turned into a crazy wildfire.
Yeah, and this the sad part is, and this is actually the sick part, there was a video because that day a couple guys had their helmet cams on, and the video actually showed me trying to save the guy. I was treating him medically, and that's all it showed. But what the prosecution and NCIS did is they hid that video, and they said they had it, but they were like, hey, we are not going to show this to anybody because it's being used in an investigation. So there was a gag order on the video. But what they told everybody was this video shows him stabbing the guy. And so the command went around to each SEAL team and gathered all the SEALs at each team and told them, like, there is a video and it shows him doing this, what he's accused of. He is guilty. And it wasn't until probably 2 months before the trial when the judge granted us permission to show the video to members of Congress, because that is what was holding people from actually supporting me, because everyone was told, oh no, there's a video and it shows him, but nobody had seen it. And so once we were allowed to show that video, Congress actually got to watch it, and they came out and they were like, this is ridiculous. It shows him trying to save the ISIS dude, not stab him. And so that is really where their whole case, that was the beginning of their case falling apart.
Now, just speaking of which, too, I was just thinking of all the dominoes that had to fall for this to go as far as it did. Like, even your own representation in the beginning, your first attorney.
Oh yeah,
that was another funny part of the book. Your description of this guy. His wife has more testosterone than he did. But they didn't. It wasn't. Either they believed the accusations or they just didn't care, and all they were doing was milking the whole thing and trying to rob the Naval Special Warfare Foundation.
Yeah. I think this is a good point to hit on too, because this doesn't really get talked about a lot, and this is actually one of the main reasons that we started our nonprofit, the Pipe Hitter Foundation. So when I was first initially accused, or told I was being accused of war crimes, I had no idea what to do. I had not been in a position like that before, and so I talked to one of my buddies who actually was in the same position that I was going into right now. He was under investigation from a deployment, I think it was like 10 years prior still. And so he was like, hey, I have these lawyers, this nonprofit called United American Patriots. And he's like, they will pick up your case and defend you, and you won't have to pay a dime. And so I was like, oh, that sounds, obviously, when you're in a position that I was in, I was like, okay, yes, please give me their number. I ended up calling them. I talked to a guy named Colby Vokey. He was a lawyer, former JAG lawyer, but he was out, but he was on the board of this nonprofit. And so they, after talking to them, they agreed to take my case. Now, at the time when I had talked to them, I hadn't been charged with anything. It was very like at the beginning. And so there was really not a lot to do. They were just like, hey, we'll see where this goes, but if it turns south, we will defend you. And obviously it turned south on September 11th, 2018, when they came and arrested me and threw me in prison. And so I had called those lawyers from prison, and I was like, hey, they threw me in prison today. It turned south. We need to start doing something. So these guys were like, oh, yeah, we're going to defend you. So I just, from that moment when they started working on my case, I just had an uneasy feeling with these guys. I would show up to court. They wouldn't be prepared. They showed no real motivation to be working on this case. To me, I just saw this lack of interest, and so I was facing life without parole. That's what I was going. And so to me, I was like, I'm facing life without parole, and you guys don't seem to be taking this seriously. So I would call my wife, from prison, and be like, and I expressed my thoughts, and I was like, hey, I don't know if these guys are the right ones. And she was like, okay, but then she would talk to them and they're like, oh, he's just under a lot of stress. Don't let him make any, he shouldn't be making any decisions right now. And um, we ended up keeping those lawyers probably for 5 to 6 months. And it just, every move that those lawyers made was not for my benefit. It was for their own benefit. And so
Mm-hmm.
what they did is they would take my face, put it on their website, the United American Patriots, and be like, hey, we're raising money for this guy's legal defense. And what we came to find out is actually only a small percentage of that money actually goes to the client, which would be me and my wife. And they pretty much take the rest and put it back into the nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
And then what the lawyers also do. So Colby was my lawyer, but like I said, he was a board member on that nonprofit. What he would do is just run up the bill.
Mm-hmm.
He would just do these outrageous charges. And he wod show me every once in a while, like, okay, hey, just so you know, this is what the bill is now, but you're not going to have to pay for this. But I would see it and it'd be like photocopying, $3 million. I'm making up a number, but like it would be some ridiculous number. And I'm like, these don't make any sense. But at the same time, I was like, I'm not paying for it. So what does it matter? Well, the Navy SEAL Navy SEALs Fund, which is run by Drago and Rachel Jazarian, they were raising money at the same time for us as this was going on. They raised about $250,000, and so the United American Patriots found out that they had raised that much, and so this is where it came to an end with them. They were like, "Hey, we want that money. Tell them to give us that, 250 grand so we can put it towards your case." And what we were saying and what I was saying to them is like, no, that money is set aside. If I get found guilty, I want my family to have that money because there's going to be no paycheck coming in. And
Right.
so they called my wife and told her, we want that money. And then they told her, if you do not give us that money, then we are going to leave him in prison for another year. And that was Leo. So that basically they were extorting us and threatening us. So at that point, that's when we ended up firing them. I fired Colby. I kept one of the other lawyers on just for continuity
Mm-hmm.
because I was scared of like hiring a whole new legal team. And this was only like a month and a half out before my trial. So I kept this guy on and he ended up quitting a week later because for one, he didn't know anything about my case. I had my new lawyer came in. He was on the job for 48 hours and he knew more about my case than this lawyer who had been on for 6 months. So he ended up quitting. I brought in the whole new legal team and, we ended up being victorious at trial. But that nonprofit, as soon as my verdict came out that I was found not guilty,
Mm-hmm.
that lawyer Colby Vokey sent me a notice saying he was suing me for $1 million because I had fired him, and we actually ended up having to go settle that just 2 years ago. It came to we were fine. The judge was like, "This is ridiculous. They're not paying you anything." But
That's
those
crazy.
are the type of individuals that we were dealing with when it comes to that. And there are plenty of lawyers like that out there. They're parasites. They wait
Mm-hmm.
outside these military bases, and then once service members get charged with anything, they'll come in and be like, "Oh, I'll help you out. I'll do all this stuff pro bono, or it's barely going to cost you anything." But what these people don't realize is these lawyers have no intention of representing you properly. All they're going to do is churn the bill, and this is how they make their money. So
Yeah. Didn't
that's
one of
that's why we
them?
started our nonprofit.
Yeah. Wasn't that? Was it Colby who was talking about how his wife was complaining that he wasn't getting paid?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not.
it was nuts.
You're just sitting in jail for months because they weren't doing anything.
Yep.
And anyways, yeah, it's nuts. So you start pipe hitters,
Mhm.
and what's the intention for the foundation?
So the intention is actually very close to what that corrupt nonprofit, United American Patriots, were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we support the active duty military, first responders, and law enforcement. And if they're being unjustly accused or targeted for doing their job, doing what they were trained to do, we step in. We provide emergency relief grants to them and their families while they're going through this stressful time.
Hmm.
We also raise money for their legal defense, and then we advocate for them as well. So we'll go out, to members of Congress or go on certain media outlets and actually put the truth out about what's happening with these individuals and add context to it. What we don't do, and what the difference between us and that old nonprofit that I was talking about, is we don't have lawyers attached to us. So we don't, like, if we take you on, we're not giving you a lawyer as well. You have to have your own lawyer, because that's where the waters get muddied and things can go wrong if you have lawyers on your board. So we do have a list of lawyers that we trust, and if the person that we're helping is like, hey, do you know any lawyers, we will give them names, but we don't give them a lawyer from our nonprofit. But other than that, that's our mission, is to make sure that the people that raise their right hand to protect their communities or this country are
Hmm.
treated fairly when they're being accused of doing something.
Well, that's fantastic. It's like the actual mission of that United, whatever that was.
Yeah. And
The,
that United American Patriots started out as a good nonprofit. It did. It started out with the same mission we did. The
hmm.
problem is they let lawyers in. They let their lawyers go on the board, and of course, as um, you know, lawyers can be greedy, and they found ways to, like, oh, this is how we can make a bunch of money by doing the things that they do. They go and find individuals to represent. They put their face up on their website, raise a bunch of money, and they barely give any back to those individuals or their families.
Yeah, it's not too close of a metaphor, but they let the inmates run the prison. Uh,
Yes,
but uh, you did have a couple things, right? Actually, some pretty incredible things working for you, despite the massive, awful things that were working against you. Uh, your wife, what a warrior. The whole
she
time you were
is.
behind bars, she was out there advocating, and she got some attention. All right, she got, in fact, all
Just
the
a
way
little
up to the
bit.
president.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife, obviously she's my best friend. We've been best friends since high school. She's my number one teammate. And I think when they threw me in prison, she, sounded the alarms. She got up and she started fighting, and to her credit too, she reached out to the command first and was like, "Hey, what are you guys doing to help my husband?" And they gave her the cold shoulder. They wouldn't talk to her. They completely shunned her. And so she was like, "You know what? Screw you. I'm going to do this on my own." So she started an organic social media campaign, which she started putting out all the facts of actually what was
Mm-hmm.
really going on, and she started gaining an extensive following. And that was from, I mean, she was hitting the pavement every day, fighting for me and just working around the clock. Her and my brother, they were, I call them the dynamic duo. I mean, my brother was going to the Capitol every day, banging on doors of Congress, trying to get people to pay attention, which was a lot harder said or a lot harder to do. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just, that's a sad reality, because no one wants to take on the military or the DoD. But he didn't give up doing that. And while my brother was doing that, my wife was hitting all of, social media, all other media outlets, and getting the truth out there about what was going on. And she did this the whole time while raising three children. Um, we had all three kids at home at the time, and we were actually just talking about this the other day. Uh, the reason my kids are doing so well from all of this is because my wife was fighting for me daily from home, but she also would not let my kids know that we were under duress, like, or stress. She
Mm-hmm.
would just take care of them and then make sure they were good to go, and then go right back to doing what she was doing for me. And she did that for, almost a year. of doing that. And yes, she ended up getting on Fox and Friends to tell the story. And then that is when the president at the time, Trump, took notice, and he ended up getting involved. And what he did is, I was in military prison for about 9.5 months. He said, "Hey, let him out so he can properly defend himself before trial." While I was in prison, I wasn't getting any of the rights that I deserved. They wouldn't let me see my lawyers. They wouldn't let me go to medical. They were, doing everything to kind of try to drive me crazy while I was in there. So he ended up tweeting. He was like, "Let him out, so he can properly defend himself before trial." But the temperament of the country back then, and I still think it's that way now, is, once Trump got involved, that really, if people were on Trump's side, then they were on our side. If people hated Trump, they hated us because of that. And so it just really, my case again became more volatile in that form or fashion. But I think that there was a big rumor or misconception too that Trump had pardoned me. He didn't. I went to trial. I faced my accusers. He did offer. He said he would pardon, and this was before we went to trial. And both my wife and I were like, "No, we don't want it. We want to go there and face our accusers because we stand on the truth, and it will come out." And so, and that's what ended up happening. He also got involved a second time after my trial because the military, because they had lost, then they tried to come after me even harder. And they were like, "Hey, we're going to take away your retirement, your disability. You're not getting anything." So it'd be like your whole 20 years doesn't exist. And he put a stop to that as well. He was like, "Nope, he's going to retire with everything he's earned honorably." So,
Well, like I said, you had a few things going for you, like not having the president in your corner and all that
yeah,
bad.
no,
Also, your the next set of attorneys, Tim, Mark, I forgot their last names, but
Mark
like that,
Casey. Yeah.
you put that whole closing argument in the book, and that was a magnus opus. That was
Yeah.
a great closing.
Oh, yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah. Even when I was writing the book, I was trying to sort of encapsulate the closing statements. And it was so
Magnum
good
opus. I said that
that
wrong.
I was like, I can't even describe this in my own words. So I'm just going to put this word for word in here, of their closing arguments. And, I really, both Tim and Mark are just both phenomenal lawyers. They couldn't be more opposite of who they are, but I knew they both have, like, to me, the way I described it. So like when you do the closing arguments in a trial, it's usually just one lawyer that gets up there and does it. It's usually the head lawyer, the guy who has the lead chair. I knew that I had two huge weapons on my side. And so what I told them both is like, I want both of you to do it. I want both of you to get up there and talk. And now lawyers have big egos. They want, like, to take all the credit, or they want to, and I'm not saying that my lawyers were like that, but I definitely know there was some ego involved. But what I explained to them, I was like, "Listen, we are in a battle here, and this is the final stages of the battle." I'm like, "Why would I not bring two of my heaviest weapons to bear and just unleash right at the end?" And they were like, "Yep, all right, let's do it." And that's exactly what they did. And yeah, it couldn't have worked out more perfectly.
Yeah, and but that wasn't the end of it, right? I mean,
No,
you were almost completely exonerated, except for the photo.
the photo. Yeah.
But it was, you were freed, but not quite. Like the command still. Why did the command have such an axe to grind against you from the get go? I mean,
It's political. It's at that point, and this is what people don't understand. The command it's an institution. So all that matters to the officers is, what does this make the institution look good or bad? And so once they make a decision like, hey, we are going to hang this person out to dry to protect the institution, they do it all the time. It happens
Mm-hmm.
all the time in every branch of the military,
Mm-hmm.
but it's usually at a smaller scale. All right. Guys will get, you're always told like, hey, you got to take this one on the chin, man. Even though you might be in the right, just take this on the chin, be a good soldier, be a good Marine, be a good sailor, take this on the chin and move on. Right. So guys, they get hung out to dry in small forms or fashions throughout their career. This obviously was bigger than that. They were literally trying to kill me because that's the way I look at it. I was facing life without parole.
Mm-hmm.
But they had made that decision very early on, like we are going to use this person as an example. And so once the institution makes a decision like that, they will never ever back down from it because the institution can never be wrong.
It's like
And
John Boyd. I don't know if you ever read that book, Fighter Pilot that changed the face of warfare, I think it's called. But he always talked to others about Be-ers versus doers, right? Those who want to get ahead and make rank and get up into the
careerists,
yeah, they're the Be-ers. The doers are the ones that might not get the promotions, but they're the ones actually doing the work. They're protecting their soldiers and their sailors. They're doing the real work.
well, yeah, you
But
have two separate groups doing the same jobs for different reasons, right?
mm,
Yeah, I think, and I know you can attest to this, being in an enlisted guy. Like we sign up to do our job because we love doing the job. Like this is what I want to do. I don't care about the money. I don't care, about how much I get paid. If you just give me enough to get by, I'm fine. I also don't care about picking up rank or making it to some level in the military where I'm in charge. For most of us, we're like, I want to keep doing this job until the wheels fall off, until I can no longer, you know, physically do this
mm-hmm,
job anymore. Then you have the other half, like you said, the Be-ers, right? They come in, they're
mm-hmm,
like, no, 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 I'm not. I'm doing this job just so it propels me to the next rank, and I'm going to keep doing that and climbing that ladder. They're not doing it for the same reasons as the doers, and that's where these two conflict all the time. Is because we look at it differently, and unfortunately, a lot of the Be-ers are in charge. And so they make these decisions that are wrong a lot of the times.
well, that's right. I mean, the Be-ers are the ones that have a certain pedigree. They have this career path that they follow. And politics within the military just as
Oh, yeah.
much as without. And in fact, they intermingle. And part of that, career path is to make a certain rank so that you can retire and continue on government service or the in the lobbies or consultancy, that kind of thing, private sector. But
Yeah,
uh, it's not about the job as much as the path. And that's unfortunate.
it
So
is. But I think that's been a tale as old as time, especially with the military.
still, all of that, there's a certain level of humanity that seems to have been forgotten all the way down to the sewing circle. Because it's hard to imagine crybaby seals. You
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to imagine for people that aren't in the SEAL community, but the
Mhm.
SEAL community is comprised of just regular dudes. I mean, that's all it is. They're human beings, and there
Right.
are people in the SEAL community that don't belong there, and they join for the wrong reasons, and they're not as strong as I think civilians and everything make them out to be, just because they're SEALs. And that's I think that my case kind of shined a spotlight on that. I think people were scratching their heads like, how is this happening? How do SEALs act like this? And it's like, no, I mean, and I'll say they're very few and far between, right? There's
Hmm.
not that many weak individuals like that in the community, but they are there. And unfortunately, I just happened to have a couple of them in my platoon.
So there was, I mean, throughout this entire experience, I mean, you're getting, it was like the world was coming down on you. The world was against you, except for your wife, a few other players. It seemed like the whole world was trying to bury you under the prison. And uh, even after the trial was over, they tried to take your rank, they tried to take your retirement, they tried to take your trident.
Yep.
And if not for the president stepping in, they would have. They would have done
Yeah.
all of that, taken all of that away, and you would have. I don't know if not for certain interventions or certain people advocating for you, you might have actually been convicted. Who knows? What was it that got you through all of that?
The number one factor was my faith. I think going through that whole mess renewed my faith in Christ. I was always a believer. My family and I, we'd go to church every Sunday. My wife was more of a strong believer than I was. I mean, she read the Bible every day, and really like focused on the Word. I did not. I was more like, hey, I'm go to work, and on Sundays, yes, we will go to church, and yes, I believe in God, and that was about the extent of my Christianity and my faith in Christ. It wasn't until I was thrown in a prison cell and having everything taken from me, and to where I was no longer in control of my own destiny or like what was going on around me, is where I really, God will humble us at in some form or fashion in our life, and I think that was a defining moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
When I was there, I was locked up for about 2.5 months. I was so institutionalized that I still thought the command was going to do right by me. I still had that in my brain. I would ask my wife on the phone, like, "Hey, what's the command saying? Are they doing anything?" And she finally just broke it down for me. And she's like, "Let me tell you something." She's like, "Nobody is on your side." She's like, "Nobody's coming to save you." She's like, I'm the only, you, myself, the
Mm-hmm.
kids, your family, your brother, we are the only ones doing anything. And she's like, you need to get that through your head that the SEAL teams, the institution wants to bury you. And so that was a lot for me to take in, because I had given everything to that institution for, almost 20 years. And so I went back to my prison cell and I sat there, and I just got on my hands and knees in the middle of my cell and I cried out to God out loud. Was just like, Lord, just, you know, I know I'm giving up. Like, I'm not giving up, but I'm giving all of this to you. I am no longer going to try and control anything, because I am not in control.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, whatever your will is, whether it be I'm found innocent or guilty, I put my complete faith and trust in whatever happens in you. And I'll tell you, man, that I've never felt such a physical force like that in my, that I had felt that day in my prison cell. I literally felt this weight come off me.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked out of that prison cell, and and not to say like everything from that moment on was like, hey, everything's fine. I was still going through a lot of stress, and, it was an emotional roller coaster, but I had this feeling of safety all the time. Like, I'm okay. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be fine. And that is what I really relied heavily on, the whole time. I delved into the word daily. Well, when I was in there, and that's that's what got me through. I get this compliment, I was getting this compliment from my friends, after the fact, or because, I was on the news, the TV was always filming me when I was showing up to court cases, and they were like, dude, you really held yourself together, man. Like I can't believe how well you looked, and like you just seemed like you had this confidence and calmness. And they're like, and I look at them, I'm like, that wasn't me. Like, believe me, brother, like inside my head, it was World War III. I was, a mess. But I was like, that was all God. God kept me on that straight and narrow, kept me strong, allowed me to present myself as this stoic, I'm a fine individual, which is what was needed at the time. Like the last thing you need is to be on the news looking like, oh shit, I'm a mess, especially when you're going through something like that. So God allowed me, He gave me the strength to be able to get through that and to present myself properly. And the other thing that got me through was just my relationship with my wife.
Mhm.
That's, I cannot stress this enough. She is the ultimate teammate, and just watching her stand up and start fighting for me. There was times when I was locked up, and, we had one TV in Gen Pop, and every once in a while I'd catch a little snippet of her on the news or something. And I mean, I would just have the biggest grin, ear to ear, like that's, my teammate, right there. And she's out there doing whatever she can to try and save me. And that just kind of, that helps you keep going as well. Just knowing that you have loved ones out there fighting tooth and nail for you when you can't fight for yourself. So that
Mhm.
really, helped me out a lot and propelled me forward. And then, I mean, just the American people as well, that surrounded, my wife and my brother, and really like got invested, and they were, out there advocating. And these are individuals who I didn't know. I don't know any of these people, but they're out there advocating for me. I mean, that alone right there, I owe it to those individuals too, to like maintain and hold the standard even while I'm under this amount of stress. So that, like, all those things coming together really just help me get through all of that.
Well, there's nothing like betrayal to make you feel out of control,
Oh yeah,
lost.
it's the
Uh,
ultimate form of betrayal.
it seemed like everywhere you turned, there was betrayal. But thank goodness you had such a strong relationship with your wife. Had just like the Trident, you get to earn that one
Yeah, oh yeah,
every day,
every
right?
day.
But okay, so it's a few years past. The book is out. What have you what have you gained from it? What have you grown out of this into? And what's going on now?
So yeah, I retired in the end of 2019. Obviously, we moved down here to the beautiful Panhandle, and we're never leaving. And so we got down here, and as you know, being you live here as well. This place is just filled with amazing people, man. I think this area where we live, I think God's special place. I think that we're in a bubble here, and you know, it couldn't have been a better place to start from after I got out. Obviously, I had to go through the whole transition piece. That was hard. Then,
Mm-hmm.
adding on to that, the fact that I was, still being smeared by the media and all that stuff at the same time. That was a struggle to get through. But I put in the work the first year after I got out. My wife was like, hey, she gave me strict orders. She's like, you are not going to go work. She's like, you are not going to like go off and try to, hit the ground running. She's like, you need to process everything that just happened to you, and you need to take time to heal yourself. And not only from the trial, but from my 20 years of combat. She was like, you've never addressed anything. And so I took that first year and I went to all sorts of different treatments.
Mm-hmm.
I tried everything. And they all did, they all have their benefits. So I think that helped me propel me forward to a good spot. But then, we started that nonprofit, the Pipe Hitter Foundation. That was great because that gave us a purpose as well.
Hmm.
So I really got to focus on that. But I had to find something that I was driven to do again. And I think that's a big thing for service members when they get out is trying to find another purpose like they had in the military, trying to find that new identity. And I think what I was being told when I got out was like, hey, you should try, reinvent yourself. You don't have to go back to, doing any military stuff. You can be something completely different. This is your chance. And I gave that some thought, and I actually, dabbled here and there. But I at the end of the day, I was like, this is not who I am. I was like, I am who I am. I'm like Popeye. I joined for a certain reason. I am this individual, and I don't plan on changing that. So I just started getting into the tactical space of training, and I love teaching. I really love you know teaching individuals that want to learn and seeing them excel. It fills my cup. So I just started doing courses on my own. Started off here in local at Stronghold Soft Solutions there. Started putting on civilian courses. I was teaching, anything from basic to advanced with pistol rifle. I would do all female courses,
Hmm.
and those were they would come and go, but it slowly started to build up. And so I was doing that I've been doing that since I got out. And I just don't work on my own. I also work with other groups like GBRS, and I'm really good friends with them. So I like to get out there, and the big passion I like to do is actually teach law enforcement. Is with doing doing CQC or active shooter assessments and stuff like that, because that's real world stuff. These guys are going out there every day and putting their lives on the line to protect your communities. And if I can impart any of the knowledge that I gained over the past 2 decades of war and give that to them, then I will do so. So that's what, I've been focused on that. But I think the big thing, and this is the most I put at the front, and I told myself this when I was in prison that I was going to do this, is my family is the priority. So I try, and I know you can probably attest to this too with guys like us. It's very easy to get back into the mode of go, go, go. Like, because we're workhorses. I'm like, I will work till my hands are bleeding, and that's what I like to do. But I still, to this day, from when I got out to this day, I make sure that I am not overdoing it when it comes to working, and that I am prioritizing my family first, and really staying home, getting to spend time with them, watching my kids grow, watching them hit these, milestones that I've missed so many of those milestones while I was in. So, I mean, the big blessing of all this, of what happened, is just, it was like a good reset for me to
Hmm.
really realize what's most important in life. And it's not your job. It's not your identity. It's your family. It's your kids. They're the ones who matter the most. If you're gonna, hold the standard and try and be an example, then you should be being an example for them first, right? And so that's really what I, prioritize right now. So I spend a lot of time at home, just being around it pretty much, like, trying to do the Mr. Mom thing. My wife is now in real estate here, and which is, I love the fact that she's, found something that she loves to do, and that gives her a purpose, because she spent our whole marriage being a stay-at-home mom and taking care of the kids. And I'm like, I have no issues reversing roles, letting her get out there, chase her dream, and I'll stay at home and fill in when I can, where I can.
How's the
Yeah.
show going?
Which show?
With Dave, the podcast.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the Shoot Me Straight. That's right. So I have a podcast here called Shoot Me Straight. That's going great. We started that 3 years ago. So Dave, as you've met, he's just a excellent guy. He was my neighbor. It was actually his idea. He wanted to. He's like, "Hey, I want to start a podcast. I'd love for you to be a co-host on it with me." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it and try it out." And I enjoy it a lot. I get to have great conversations with people once a week, have them come in, and I get to meet extraordinary people like you. That we were lucky enough to have you come on and hear your story.
No, shucks. You're going to make me blush. Well, you know what? We're getting actually over time right now. So let's segue into the final segment, which is the countdown to impact. It's 3, 2, 1. 3 books, 2 quotes, and 1 person. Doesn't have to be the person, just 1 person who's made an impact in your life.
Okay, so 3 books.
Correct.
All right, so the Bible. That's number 1. Number 2, I'm not a big fan of like military or SEAL books, but Fearless by Eric Blem. It's about Adam Brown. Probably one of the most epic stories I've ever read about another SEAL. If anybody that's listening, definitely go check that out. And then let's see, the 3rd book. It's a classic, old classic that I've read probably, I don't know, a handful of times. Is To Kill a Mockingbird. I love that story. I've read it since I was little. I think there's all sorts of life lessons in that story when you read it, and it still applies today. So those are 3 books that I would recommend, I guess. And then was it 2 quotes? This pain will serve you well someday. That is my favorite, one of my favorite quotes. That quote was actually given to me when I was locked up by another team guy. He gave it just a card. That's all it said on it was, "This pain will serve you well someday." I tell anybody that's going through hard times, especially the people that we help out through our foundation, it doesn't matter what you're going through right now. And I would almost say, like, the amount of suffering that you're going through right now is going to make you that much stronger on the other end. You have to just put your faith in Christ and push through, and all the pain and suffering that you are going through will serve you well on the other end. And I swear by that. I think that, there's nothing in life is worth doing unless you suffer a little bit first for it. That's just the rule that I go by. And then the other quote would be "The Man in the Arena," obviously by Theodore Roosevelt. I love that. I love that whole passage. And then what was the number 1 person that had the most impact on my life? I've had so many. I would go ahead and say my dad. He's obviously just I've had 2 wonderful parents. My dad served in the military for 26 years as a West Point officer. Just watching him as I grew up, and his work ethic, but most importantly, how he treated my mom, and just how their marriage was the whole growing up. I think that had a huge impact on me, and just the way that I handle my marriage now with my wife.
Terrific. All right. Final question is, what does living a life of impact mean to you?
I would say, like impacting others. I think you should live a life where you are impacting others in a positive way. And to me, that is just, I'm always, be the example. It's one thing you can sit here and I can tell you all the things that you should do and, give you all these motivational quotes and do all that. But if I'm not doing that myself and you don't see me holding myself to that standard or being the example myself, and none of that means anything. So I try to hold myself to a standard each and every day. I try to be an example for my kids. I'm not a perfect human being, but I do have, I know where my strengths are. I know where my weaknesses are. I try to work on my weaknesses, you know, on a daily basis, but I also use my strengths each day. And I hope my, you know, kids are able to watch that and see that and, you know, and apply it in their life later on. And I don't sit there and tell my kids like, hey, this is how you should be. I just hope that they see me and then doing certain things and they try to emulate that later on in life. And hopefully if I'm living that, you know, being that example for my wife and kids, then hopefully I can also be that for other individuals as well, and impact them in a positive way.
All right, my friend. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your time and some of your experience. And thankfully, there's some good to have come out of this, and you've grown stronger in faith
Always.
and your family. If anybody wants to find out more, wants to follow you or learn more about Pipe Hitters Foundation or follow the show, where do they go?
So, yeah, for the Pipe Hitter Foundation, we have the website, pipehitterfoundation.org. You can go on there. You can see all the individuals that we're helping at this time. You can click into their stories. And then if you want to donate to one individual that their story, you know, hits you, then you can do so, or you can just donate to the nonprofit as a whole. And that money will go to the right person. And then for Shoot Me Straight is the podcast. We're on every channel. So just type in Shoot Me Straight on Spotify or wherever else, and it'll pop up. And then I'm also on Instagram, Eddie Gallagher, Eddie_Gallagher. I'm on there. And I'm actually going to be starting a series on there now that I am laid up. I'm going to start a recovery series on just my recovery and the things that I'm able to do right now. Once again, trying to set the positive example, man, and not just sitting on my butt and feeling sorry for myself. So I'll be hopefully starting that next week.
Awesome. Can't wait. And you know what? We're so close. When you're not laid up anymore, we got to get together.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, brother.
All right.
Let's do it.
I'll let you go. Thanks again. Take care.
All right, Aaron. Take it easy, brother.